Okay, so we just built out that API in Rails. Now we're going to consume it. We're going to use it in React. Now, when we talk about this word API, application programming interface, especially with like CRUD and like HTTP, we can really think of it like as a menu. So, and this is a way like computers can talk to each other. It's, it's just a standard protocol of, how computers talk. And it's a way also that like me as a backend developer, I could talk to a front end developer. And, honestly, I don't care if my backend's written in Rails or Python or whatever, or I don't care if my app is written in React or Angular. We can agree on this menu. And what I mean by that, I'm just going to say, like, here's our API. If you do a GET request to API links, I'm going to give you back all of the links in my database. If you do a POST request to API links, and you send me the data with description, username, I'm also going to say, hey, that's required, remember, because we have that validation, title, and URL. I'll create you a link. If you do a GET request to API links and then give me the ID of that link in the URL, I'll give you back one link. Patch and put, there's two verbs for update, but we're going to use put. So if you give me a put request to API links and then the ID, and then also, I need, since it's a put request, you need to give me the description, username, title, URL, or one of those fields, something to update it with. I'll update that link object. And if you do a delete request to API links and then the ID, I'll delete that link. So that's our menu. And we have like this link model, which is just a way to keep track of links. I could have a cars model, a car model, like the API would be very similar. The routes would be like, it'd be exactly the same, but the links would switch to cars, and maybe, car might not have a description. A car might have like a make and model and mileage. So, but it's going to be very standard. And then also, I've actually created a live API right here. So this one's actually living, on the server. It's through a free account on Heroku, so it can take some time, but this is essentially what we just built out. It's a different project, but this is like the exact same thing we just built out. So if I go to this URL, actually don't think I wonder if I just go to the website, what it returns. Yeah, it doesn't return anything because I haven't set that up. So if I actually just go to their website, this is the website I created. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't like return any HTML. But if I go to API/links, that gets me back the links. And if I slack this out,
Danny, oh no, I'm not doing it.
This will actually, you'll be able to hit this URL too. So this is a shared database. So if I go in here, instead of going to localhost 3001, if I do a post request to this URL, and in the body, give it a username and a title. So there's the actual like website I send. Cool, that worked. If I go refresh the page, there it is. It's like in my database. And then if you refresh your page, you'd be able to see that. So this is like live data. So we're able to create stuff to an actual database. So when you do create something, please, and like you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to give it a username And just use your name with your last initial. That should work. Cool. So let's go in and, well, first of all, any questions with, where was it? With this little menu, you kind of, at like a high level, kind of see how this is maybe going to work. Because we were doing this last week, we were doing a GET request, you know, to rec resin. I think it was like API users, right? And
Yeah.
that returned all the users. Now we're just adding all the other ones so we can get specific. We can do posts, we can create, we can update, and we can delete.
I think it makes sense, but it's just, it's all new. Well, not
So it's
yet,
all just,
but it's
it's
fun.
a little bit more interactive, the database is, where instead of just like reading the users, now we can do all this other stuff, right?
Yeah, because what you're doing last week, like you would, so think about it this way. Last week, if you created something, like you had a form and you added it to your UI and you hit refreshed, like you go back to your page, like it wasn't getting saved to the database.
Yeah, like as soon as you refresh, it's gone.
Yeah, or you like turn off your website, or you turn it off and you go, it's like, it's not there. So now these are going to actually change the database.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, and just, this is why I kind of want you, and just, can anyone see like, what's like a big issue with how I have this set up? Like deleting these links, updating them, creating them. You know how I kind of have like the username in like our field? Let me just show you this. Let's do a delete request, or I'll show you this. So,
I mean, it kind of looks like just anyone can do anything to it, right?
yeah, so Randy, what's your last name?
Clements, Clements.
Yeah, so Randy C. So that should be a valid one. So I could say from Randy. Cool. So like Randy, you know, let's say Randy comes in, creates a link, and then someone does a delete request. And, you know, this has ID 20. So go in, delete it. And now it's like gone. So
it's
like,
not super secure.
it's not, yeah, I mean, anyone can create, like you could create a link under someone else's name just as long as you know their first name and initial. You could go in and update it as long as you know the ID. It's pretty easy to find the ID. You just do a GET request. And let's actually go back, create a post. So I do a GET request. Like I'm getting all of them. I can see all the IDs, like, you know, if in this exit, like Randy created 21 and 22, I have the IDs, I can delete them. Yeah, so there's no like authentication. There's no like, we're not actually checking. So anyone can delete and add anything.
Is that where like a password would come in?
Yeah, it's definitely where we want to get into like authentication, but that's going to be a ways out. Another thing that you'll do is like, before we do that, normally you're going to be using your own database. So once you create like a Rails project on your computer, that database only lives on your computer. So when you're updating stuff, you're only changing the database on your computer. This one we're actually sharing. There's one database that we're all sharing. So don't expect this to like, you know, this is not secure at all. All right. Okay, and yeah, also, so here's the here's a repo for this with it's kind of all done, but I kind of want us, if you're kind of like want the read through, here's like on the README of this repo, and I'll slack this out again. This is kind of like what I'm going to be following for today and tomorrow. So the kind of this like a setup.
Should we try to follow along or should we just watch?
Yeah, with this one, you can follow along if you want, because now I will go a little slower with this one. And let me just kind of go through these steps before I actually type them out. So what we're going to do, I'm going to just close all my VS codes and all of this stuff. Okay, so and maybe I can just do this side by side. I'll just slack this all out in case you want this just. Okay, so remember last week I threw this little starter app up that just has React router set up and it has a basic data provider. So we don't have to spend all the time setting that up again. What we can do is we can clone this repo down. So cd into one of like a week 3 directory, wherever you want to have this project live. So for me right now, yeah, I think week 3 is a good one. And I'm going to run this git clone command. I'm actually going to like append lecture on here because yeah, I think I might already have this. So I'm using git clone. I'm taking that link from my starter project and I'm just renaming it to this name. Cool. And then I can cd into that. And then, yeah, I'm going to run yarn, just kind of following these steps. So I'm cloning, running yarn to install all the packages. And then I can run yarn start just to give this a little test, just to show you what we're like, what we get with this. Localhost 3000. I will also open this up in code so we can look at it in code.
What commands did you do after the clone?
They're all in GitHub. So it's clone, cd into it, yarn start. So you clone it, you cd into the project, you run yarn to download all the packages, you do yarn start to start up your server. So here's what we get. We get like a little simple nav bar set up, but it has React router installed, so it's all kind of set up. We also have a data provider that's set up. But what it's really meant to do, it's just meant to be like, hey, we could use this starter project for any kind of almost any project. And like if I go look at the code, I have some basics. I got my home and about in a pages folder. I have this very simple data provider where it's just having like this simple string just to kind of demonstrate that it's working. I'm probably going to want to get rid of this. If I go to my index.js, it's got my data provider wrapping my app that has all my routes set up. So this, I can go in and add my own routes. And my app.js, I have a simple starter app, so maybe I could switch this to be like app. Does that make sense? But so this can be, it's kind of just, all of this stuff we don't want to just redo over and over again. So I can just have this kind of project to start out, save us like 30 minutes of like doing all of this. Cool. One other thing, I'm going to stop my server. So since this is like this starter project from GitHub, I don't want to be pushing up to this starter project because I want to leave this like generic. And if you use it, you won't be able to push up anyway because it's my repo. So if you want to add your own GitHub, I need to remove the and let me just show you this. If I do git remote -v, see, this is pointing up to that router context starter repo. I don't want that. This is going to be my link CRUD with API project. So I'm going to remove that link to the remote. So I do a git, and this is all in Slack too, git remote rm origin. Now if I do a git remote -v, I just don't want to type that git remote -v. I don't have any remote because I removed it. Then I could go to GitHub, create a repository. No, I want it to be called this. Go ahead, add this new remote. We git add commit. Now I can push up to this.
Will this be homework? Should we actually do this? Or is this optional?
No, this is like, yeah, if you want to use this for your homework and you don't want to do all that setup, you can totally use this starter project. And you will 100% have to do this step because you will not be able to push up to this repo. Because that's my repository. You will not have access rights to that. So you will need to remove the origin and create your own. So it's nice. So you can't screw that step up.
No, I'm just wondering if what we're going to be like creating today is going to be based on this. So I'm just wondering if I should make a GitHub repo now.
Yeah, you could do it. Yeah, because your homework's going to be essentially the same thing. So yeah, what we get in this project, we have Axios already installed. We have our React router, and we have a data provider. And this is kind of showing, you know, what we have. Like this is what you get. Here's kind of like the basic setup. I feel like I never pushed up. Oh, sweet. That's actually the README from the starter project. So cool, let's go in and now we can start building out our app. So where to start? Where should we start? Does anyone even know what can you even keep track of what we're doing? Have you just lost that? I think that can be like one of the hardest things of coding. It's like you just find yourself asking like, where the hell am I? What am I doing again?
I'm caught up, except for that issue I have in the terminal, but I'm not sure what we're doing exactly. So
yeah. So what we're going to do here is we want to now, so we just cloned a starter project. We have it up and running. But this is going to be our links app. So we now want to do CRUD actions on links. So we just created that backend in Rails. Now we're kind of like switching gears to front end. And we kind of want to redo what you've been doing last week with CRUD actions. But we want to do these on that links model. And we're actually going to use an API. So now we're on like our React mindset of things. So yeah, what I'm asking is, where do you start? I think this, like this is like, let's say I gave you this homework, like, because I could be like, okay, go do this now. It's like similar to what you did last week. What things might you might be confused about some parts, but what things do you think you could do at this point?
Well, like CRUD stuff, like create something.
Create, yeah, so you could say, but that's a little generic, like, because that is the homework, like do CRUD actions on links. Looking for more, I think, and because that's right, but more specific, because once again, the more you can break this down into smaller tasks, the easier those tasks are going to be. Because yeah, well, like what does that mean? So did you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So we do want to do the CRUD actions on links, but what kind of things, what's like a smaller subset? There's not like a wrong or right answer here. Or maybe like there's not like a 100% way to start doing this, but just think of some things, like if you're starting the homework, what might you do?
Maybe just create like different files that would go to different pages.
Cool. Yeah, I think that could be a good option. Like, hey, let's like maybe think about like more in React Router, like getting some of our routes set up in some of our components.
Or just like organization with folders and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I think that could be a good one. Going back to the CRUD actions, you could maybe say, hey, let's just do the CRUD actions in my data provider. Like not worry about it updating the UI, but just like maybe I want to start just in my data provider. Can I just get like maybe and just start with like reading the links? Can I just get the links? Like these small steps just to, try to get just like something working. So I think that could be a good way. You could start with like, oh, maybe I want to build out just a form. Like let's build out a form to create a link and just get the form working. So there's all these potential steps we could do. So I think I like the React Router, like getting some basic pages set up. Because this is kind of maybe going to also force you to think about how you want this to work. So let's do that. So I'm probably going to want, I could maybe do this in my home, or I could just come in here. I could create a new file, links.js. Import React from React. Links. Links, or return, and let's do H1. Links here. So now I could, try to render this. So I can go to my app and, maybe I'm like, hey, I don't really care about, I don't really need to show a home component. I'm just going to call this links. And let's have this actually just be our root path in React Router. And actually, I don't even need this about page anymore. So there's stuff like that. Cool. Then so I created a links component, very simple, updated my app.js just to have that one. So something that's going to be a little confusing with this. You might start to see there's a duplicate name, right? I have my own link and there's a link component in React Router. Kind of see how those are two different things, but they're going to be named the same. We'll get back to this, but just note, this might cause a little confusion, and this can sometimes happen where you have these two things that are named the same, but they're two different things. Lovely coding. So I want this to go to my links component. Now this one actually doesn't have a path. I want it to be the root path, so I'm going to throw an index here. So what this is saying is if there's a slash, because I have some nested routes inside of here. So if you go to a path where it's just slash and we have this index prop, it just says, hey, go to that links page. So if I go to localhost 3000, I need to start my project. Links is not defined. Index. So this is my source index.js line 21. Index source line 21. There it is. Links is not defined. I need to import it. And actually, just for demo, and just so I can like throw this in a comment. I'm going to go ahead and throw this about just so we can see it. Then back in my app.js, I'm going to throw, okay, so this is just a little React router thing. So I have a link to slash and a link to about. In my index.js, I have this index. I don't actually give this one a path. So what it's saying, hey, match the parent path, which is just a slash. This path actually is slash about, so that's the one it's going to match. So if I go to localhost 3000 with nothing there, that's the backslash. That's just like the default home route. That takes me to that links component. If I want to go see about, I need to say slash about. But that is not taking me to about. Okay, there it is. So there's about. I need to change my app.js. This is a little more about. So my links, notice links, there's nothing appended about that slash about. So that's really just like, that is what that index is doing. Saying, hey, match that parent, or I can give it a specific path. Cool. Let's do a link show.js. Maybe we'll just have a page to show one link. So I'm just going to copy this one, link show. I'm not going to throw this in my main nav bar because this one I'm going to want the specific ID of the link. So, but I am going to throw this in my to handle here. So if someone gives me links and then an ID of a link, I want that to go to the link show page. So the colon ID, that you can think of that, that's a wildcard. That's just going to, it's kind of what we just saw in the Rails, but this is React Router. This is not an API call. But if I go to localhost 3000/links and then, give it anything, that takes me to the link show page. What I'm going to want to eventually do is give it a ID. So that should show, the link with ID 1. That should show the link with ID 2. So I have an about, I have my homes. Cool. Let's do a link form.js. And actually this time we're going to have this form be both for edit and update. Import, I'm just going to copy one of these. Link form. And I can, I want to add this one. So let's do Turkey. New link. Just gonna throw off some names. Path that meets Turkey. Now when I click new link, that takes me to localhost 3000 Turkey. That is link form here. Bad name, so I should probably do like links new. So I can call these paths anything. Let's maybe make that a little more descriptive. So links new, change that to links/new. Cool. We're also going to want one more. We're going to want links ID. We'll call this edit. That's also going to take us to our link form. Right? If we're creating a new link, we don't need an ID. If we're updating a link, we need an ID, right? So I could go to links, one, edit. That still takes me to the link form. But that one's going to have, we're going to eventually with the React Router, we're going to be able to grab that ID out of there. So we know which thing to edit. If it's a new, we're not going to know. And let me kind of show you one way how we're going to see if this is an update or new. So first of all, does anyone need any of this code? You want me to slack out?
Yeah, I do.
So I'll go ahead, I'll slack out I'm just going to slack out the routes from my render or from the index.
Also, how do you relaunch this application again in the terminal?
Yarn start.
Yarn start?
Yeah.
So it's just the same as React?
Yeah, that's the React. Yeah. All right, there's the app. And then, those components, they're all just kind of stubbed out like that. So you can just copy and paste these and change the names. All right. But I'm going to do one thing with this form just to kind of show you how we're going to know if this is an update or new, but it's going to be the same form, and why it is important that I have these two different paths, right? I have two different paths for rendering the same component. So why do this? Well, if I have an ID, I know it's going to be an update. If I don't have an ID, I know that's a create. So that's going to be the main logic there and how I can reuse this. So I'm going to import use params from React Router DOM. And I'm going to do a const params equals use params. So we can do our okay. Let's come down here and we're going to say do a paragraph. We're going to do a little check params.id. So if we have an update, or sorry, if we have an ID, we update. If we don't have an ID, it's a new form. And then let's just also show the ID as well. I'll just do another paragraph. So if we have an ID, let's do this. Just to like visualize it. Params.id. I'll say no ID. Okay, so I'm at localhost 3000 links new. That's the new form, no ID. Let's do a links one edit. That's my update form. ID is 1. If I do like ASDF, ID is ASDF. So I need to make sure when I create this URL that I actually give it a valid ID. But you see how we can use the URL to show whether or not, or that ID. It's really all about having that ID or not. So I think I have pretty good set, like my routes set up pretty well. Like that was a good chunk of work to get done, right? That was like a smaller task and I was able to get that done. So that's cool. This would also probably be a good time since it's working. What might be a good idea? What might be smart to do right now? Commit. Yeah, I broke up my work into a small chunk. I have it working. It's like my app's not done by any means, but like, yeah, it's kind of working. Or this one part. So I could do a get commit m, and, set up routes. I actually need to add get add dot get commit dash m set up routes. And I can start my server in yarn start. All right. So next step. Well, now I kind of want to, create kind of like another chunk of work to do. So from here, I could maybe go and build out my form, could maybe build out, one of these components, like I go to the links component, build that out. But I don't know, what do you think would be nice to actually have? Some actual data. I mean, there's not really like a right order, but hey, what actually, if before I build out this links component, it might be actually nice to have some links. So why don't I go focus on maybe some of the like grabbing links, like maybe doing the CRUD stuff, just as far as like the data provider is concerned. So this is kind of a reason why I really like this data provider. It can help break up the work. It's like, oh, maybe I can just do the CRUD actions within the context of my provider. And, and then I can break those up into individual components and into individual actions. Like I want to get the data. Okay, so now I can come in here and start worrying about that. So this is just a demo. Like since it's a starter project, I don't really need this. So I can get rid of this. I can and create my own, like I want links data and set links. Probably want this to be, I don't know, either null or an empty array. I'm gonna do an empty array. And now I'm like, okay, I need to get data from database, or we'll just call it, from my API. I need to, add data to API. I need to update data to API. I'll also say this and update. And we don't even need to say data. I need to get links from API and update link state. I need to add a link. Just say create link. Say slash these with database too. Using our API, we're going to create a link to our database. Then we need to update state. Why? Let's just say this. I want to update a link to our API database, and then update link state in UI. And then I'm going to want to delete a link. All right. That can be another way you can kind of break up work, is just comment it out. Like, what things do I need to do? And even since I have an and, those can kind of be like, separate tasks too. So let's go ahead and work on this first one. So get links, okay. Make a function called get links. This is going back to last week. This is going to be an async function. Try catch block. Now for all these errors, let's just alert error occurred. So an alert, have we talked about alerts? Alerts just pop up a box in your browser. said like, and it's going to say error occurred. And then I want to do a let or const. I could do either let response equal await. So how do I get all the links with Axios? It is.
Do we just need to import Axios at the top?
Yeah, I do need to import Axios, so let's do that. So think about it here. You are the customer at the restaurant here. However you spell restaurant. I worked at a restaurant for like 15 years. I can't spell the word. Right? So now in the React, so when you think about when you're doing Rails, you're like the business, you're the restaurant, you're creating the menu, you're telling the kitchen what to make, you're doing all of that. When you're working in React, you're the customer. So we need to know what to order. How do we know what to order? What do we need to look at? It's that API, right? It's that menu that we just defined. And so let me kind of show you, just go back to it. It's this right here. So I could almost throw this up, in my data provider. There's my menu. I want to get to all the links. So I need to say, I need, to order the right thing. That's a GET request to that. That is the order. It's the HTTP verb along with the URL. It's like saying, hey, if you're at McDonald's, I'm at McDonald's. This is like the McDonald's part right here. That's the website. Saying, hey, get me a hamburger. Like I don't, as the front end, I don't care that it's written in Rails. Like I don't need to know any of that. I just need to know that a GET request to this URL is going to return all the links. This, like as a React developer, this is all I need to know about working with the API. So this is my menu.
So on React, you're always going to be using a URL.
We'll see, once we create our own or we're using like localhost, we'll actually see it being able to work like this.
Okay, but it's still referencing that.
But this one, like this is a specific thing. And something I could do to clean this up, I could do something like this, const URL equals this string. And then I could interpolate it. So I don't have to like type that whole thing out. I could just use that URL variable. Call this like base URL. Might clean up my code a little to do that. Cool. And then set links as .data. Yeah, and I'm going to say like, this is going to come back as res.data, or like, I shouldn't say it's going to come back as res.data. I should say it's going to come back as an object data. There you go. There's your links. So for now, it's all going to be res.data. Notice with the other API, it was res.data.data. Not with my API, it's just res.data.
And that's because it just doesn't have another layer of data you have to go into, right?
Yeah,
Because the other one was like it was nested in like 2 or 3 times.
yeah.
Okay.
It's still going to be it's going to be nested in response.data. Response.data is going to be the array of links.
Right. Okay.
Cool. And then, so I could say like, well, I don't need these original things were just for, demo purposes. So I could now, send my links and my get links to my data provider. So then in my links.j, so now I created the state links and then a setter to set that state links. And let's just for now, let's just pass the links in my provider. Now in my links.js, I want to grab that from my state. So let's do a little use context review. So I want to grab that universal, like that global link state from my provider. So I grab the context hook and I say const, let's just call it x equals use context. And then I want to grab that data context that is exported from my provider right there. Line 21. Cool. And then what I could do is just to see if this is working. I think this is a really useful tool, the json.stringify. So it just allows me to kind of see what it looks like. I don't have to like go in and try to map over this. I just want to see what X is. Did I actually, because there's a lot of steps here, and what actually would even probably be a quick, even before I did that, why don't I just do a console.log of a res? I'm just going to comment that out for now. Console.log my response so I can see that, like, is that working? Because I want to test this function, right? I wrote it out. Go here. Oh, crap. How do I get this? It's like, oh, wait. What's something I could have even done before this? Let me just comment all this out. You know what would have maybe been a good idea? Let's just do a console.log get links called. Now I do want to pass that. Like maybe that's the first thing I want to do is, can I actually call this function inside of my data provider? There's my links. I can also do like a button. So that the smaller you can break these up, especially when you're learning, the easier you're going to make life on yourself. Like, can I just get this to log that message that I had? Because, this can be confusing when you're starting out. It's like, I have a function here in my data provider that I want to call in another file. How do I do that? On click. I need to inspect console. So when I click that, it's calling that function. Why don't I just do this? X is just an object, right? And I can just destructure those things that I'm passing right off the bat. Works the same. Can be a clean way to do that. This use context is always going to return an object. So if you want, you can always just destructure your keys off that. So use context. Sweet. Now that I have that click working, then I could try doing my Axios call. On click, get links. Boom, there we go. And I had that JSON stringify, so I can see I'm actually getting those links. Something that might happen, and I'm going to blame you, but if, and this is why, people do not generally have just these public APIs. Usually there's some sort of authentication you need. So don't do this, or try not to do this. Don't even type this. But what's going to happen if I were to call this get links right here accidentally? Remember, that's going to trigger a re-render, which is going to do an API call, which is going to trigger a re-render. It's going to do an API call, yada, yada, yada. Like we get in that infinite loop, but you're actually hitting an actual API, an actual database. It's what it might do is if you do too, because it's not a paid account, it's like a free, this is a free website. So if you do too many requests, it's just going to shut you off. And I don't have any throttling going on. So it's very likely that this API fails because someone forgets to, and it's fine. I'm like, it's not a big deal, but someone's, forgets, gets stuck in an infinite loop, does too many API requests. And then Heroku, which is where I'm hosting this, says, sorry, you did too many requests today. I think it's kind of done by the hour, but anyway. So there we go. I'm now able to do an on click and grab those from the API. Cool. And for now, I would say just seeing this links updated, that's good enough. Since I have this JSON stringify, I'm actually able to see my state update. So now actually I have enough to go through and go do the rest of my CRUD actions. Sweet. So let's create a link to, create a link to a API. So this is our CRUD. So const create link. It's going to be async. Try. Just going to copy this catch part because I'm going to get that more or less the same. So I want to add something. I want to create a link. What's the menu for that? What does the menu look like? I want to do a post request to API links, and then I need to send it an actual link, right? Okay. So let response equal await Axios dot post. It's actually going to be the same URL. Difference between these two is the method. This one's a get, this one's a post. Now this one, I'm actually need a link object to pass it to, and how I do that, this is new, we haven't done this. I'm just going to expect this function to get a link object, you know, this will be from the form eventually, and then I'll add it. Just console.log. I'm just going to show you this res error response. Okay, so once again, maybe getting ahead of myself, but we did it. I could, you know, console.log just to get this hooked up, but I have this function create link. I now want to provide this to my components. So I'm just going to add that to my data provider thing. Should maybe change this name, but I think that's fine for now. So now I have this create link function in my links.js, I can pull off from my context. So that's create links. Here I can kind of just hard code this, create, probably should not call that create links. Oh, it's create link, okay. Create link. Create link. Now I have a create link button. Okay, we're getting an error. Okay, don't really have, it's just undefined. I'm not really getting anything back from my server. Remember what my create link needs is it needs a object. Title, let's just do title here. So I'm just going to I'm going to skip the form for now, just to kind of test this out. Like create link, pass it a link object. Just do title here. Create link. Error occurred. 422. So notice that this is in my data provider line 45, and it's hitting that alert. So it's actually failing because we got that alert, error occurred. If I look at this response data error.response, and I look at this data thing in here and I see the errors, like there's that error message from my server. Remember when we created that username is not a valid username. All right, I need to give this a valid username. So when I create a link, it actually needs a valid username. James Y. Can't remember if I uppercase that or not. I think it's not. I think it's just one word. So now I add that username, go to my console. I'm just going to clear it, create link. Didn't see anything. So I think that worked, but you know, something I maybe should have done is once again, just right here, do a console.log response. Because that was successful. I just didn't know it was successful. So console.logs can be nice to kind of like show you what's going on. So I'm going to create link. I see this response. I see this 200 error. So if you ever see a 200, that's not an error. That's like success. I can look at my data, response.data. There's my response.data. There's an ID. It has an ID, successfully created title here. So that's ID 24. I do an on click. That should be in there. Cool. So that's working. But, you know, it's like create to DB. And then after we want to like update UI. This step right here is actually updating the UI. When we set the links, remember that's going to trigger a re-render. So what do I need to do here? This is from the homework last week. How do I update my UI after I add, you know, after I, how do I update my links in state?
Is that one filter?
It's not filter. Filter is to remove. That's good. You're at least thinking of the right, like, oh, it's a thing on arrays. It's the spread operator. So, right, I want to copy my links. I want to copy my state, which is the links. But this one, let's think about this. So this link object, this is going to eventually come from the form. We're hard coding it now. And I can do something like this, like set links. With this from the form, and then, so this is how I add something to an array, right? I can just spread out over the old array to clone it, and then add the new thing. This is not what, so I could do it like this. I could take it from my form, or I could use res.data, which is from my database. It's going to be the link from the database. What is the key importance between this link object from my form and the actual link object from my server, this res.data? What happens when I create something? Like we successfully create something to the database. What do we get that we don't have when we first try to do it?
Does it generate an ID?
Yes, it's the ID. So if I were to put this here, this would be bad because it wouldn't have that ID. So I want to put response.data because that's going to have the ID. So now I need to change this button so it doesn't say on click. It's kind of a little confusing. Get links. I'm just going to refresh. Okay, so now I click get links. Cool. So I'm going to create a link. There it is, ID 25 title here. Create link 26. So it's creating those links. I refresh my app. I say get links. They're there. I mean, they come back in a different order, but ID 25 and 26 are there. So that's the big difference. I can refresh my app. They're going to be there. Let's keep going.
How is it making IDs? How's it? Did you
How's
do?
it?
You
That's
didn't
just
do random, right? Did you? How did you set it to know which ID it was going to create next?
That's something that just, it's a SQL thing. So when you create something to a database, when you create that table, just by like, it's going to generate that ID key automatically. And IDs and databases they're what called their primary keys, their unique keys, and their auto incrementing keys. So they auto increment. That's kind of the key thing. So when you create something, it's going to automatically create an ID on that thing in the database, and it's just going to add one to it. So that just kind of happens behind.
It's all being done through Heroku and then linking to your database that you created.
It's done. It's not really Heroku. It's just it's a SQL thing. It's Rails. So it's really a SQL thing. When you create something to a database and you give it an ID, like it's just by default going to have an ID. That's going to be auto incrementing. And so that gives you a unique way to grab things from your database.
Will that update on the database website?
What?
Will that update on the database website if you add an ID?
No, you don't add an ID. The database does it.
But what I'm saying is, will it register and refresh on that new website or on that website? Not this website, but your database website.
It's not like the database is it's literally like a computer somewhere probably in like California. And I'm going into their hard drive and I'm creating these things in that computer's memory. And then I'm doing a GET request from my computer, in whatever Salt Lake or wherever you're at. It goes to that computer, wherever that server lives, and it's grabbing that data. So the ID is there, the title's there. Is that? Because I don't know exactly what you were asking.
I think he's wondering if it changes the original database.
I think we just all sort of missed, maybe it's just me, but I'm just kind of missing how this is all connected.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so and yeah, I totally get why. Like there's so many moving pieces right here. Like, because we're actually getting into like this is like a full stack lecture, like we're doing the back end and the front end. This is a full stack right here.
So the difference between what we were doing last time with the React router and this time is this time we're actually changing the database, right? So when we refresh, what we added is actually going and saving on the database rather than just on our website.
Yes.
Okay.
If you do this call right here, like an axios.get, you're going to see this exact same data.
Okay.
Like you're going to see something with ID 26 that has title here. Like this is like this stuff is shared between us because there's only one database. Like since this is live, there's only one database, and we're all accessing through Axios. It's like we're all going to the same McDonald's.
Yeah. So you could just keep adding those, and it would just keep adding to the database. Okay.
Cool. That's why this API could very easily break today, just because someone might accidentally or purposefully, do an infinite loop and might, we might get shut down on as many requests as we can do on Heroku because this is a free account. They're gonna they have a limit, but we're starting to see it at least. Okay. So let's do an update. And I'm just going to copy this because an update's going to be pretty similar to the create. I'm going to call this I'm going to give this a different name, update. The really only difference that I'm going to do there's two differences. The first one is the request. So I want to do a put. I look at my menu, a put API links. Now I need the ID of the link. How do I get the ID of the link? I'm going to get it from my form. Or I'm going to get it from whatever this, I'm going to pass it from my form. So if, because I should have that, if it's remembered, if we go back to my link form, if it's an edit, I'm going to have an ID. So I can like pass this ID down. If it's an edit. If it's a new, I'm not going to have an edit, right? So I just know from this method's going to expect to have an ID on it. Like if this does not have an ID, alert, no error, or no ID given, will not work. I'm going to check to see if I have an ID. If they don't even give me an ID in this object, it's going to say, hey, no ID is given. This is not even going to work. I'm not even going to try to do the API call. Does that make sense? So I'm expecting if someone's calling this method, they better give me the ID. And then the other thing that's going to be different is how I update the UI. So we'll say res.data is the updated thing. How do I update my state? See, this is where you gotta like just try to compartmentalize stuff because this is what you were doing all last week. But then you start throwing in all these other pieces and it just jumbles your brain and you like don't know what you're even doing. But this is what you spent all last week on. I have an array of links. I'm getting a new link, which just happens to be called res.data. I want to update my link state. At least tell me the method that I should use here. There's the spread operator, there's filter and map. There's like 3 options. I want to update something.
Would it be map?
Yeah, that's going to be map. So let's do this. Let updated links. I'll throw this into a variable. So I'm going to go through my current state of links and I'm going to map each of them. I'm just going to call it L, so it's shorter. So does my L.id, does it equal my response.data? That is the thing I'm returning when I successfully update something. Does it match that ID? And you know, maybe this might make more sense just to rename it like let updated link equal res.data. Sometimes this can be just to make things more readable. Store it into a variable and name that variable something meaningful. And you know, I could also just name that link because then I can like read it. Okay, does the link ID equal the updated link ID? Question mark. If it does, return the updated link because that's the thing I want to change. If not, just leave the link the same. Right? You've written this. This is like so much of your homework from the past week. It's just going through, finding the IDs that matches. If the IDs match, return that change thing. If they don't match, just return the original thing. And then I can set links to be updated links. Let's see here. So in my links.js, I can now do a.
So what is updated links doing again? It's just updating whatever information you want to put inside of that.
Yeah, it's updating the link. It's like if you had a post on Facebook and you misspelled something and you wanted to go change it, you would update it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to update a link. I'm going to change the title to updated. That's the only, I don't really even need to pass the username. I can just pass it, one thing or all 4 things. So if I do update link, and I'll switch this to update link. What error am I? So I don't have like the username description. I'm going to get an error, right? But the error is going to be, I guess I didn't, first of all, I need to import this update link. So there's my function. So the error I'm getting is update link is not a function. So line 14, this is not a function. Well, I'm importing it right here. Why is that not a function? Update link, yes, it's a function. It's right there. Well, I actually forgot to add this to my actual, this data provider thing, which I then passed to my provider. So it wasn't, I needed to add it here, update link, that function. So I can click update link. Cool. Now I hit my error. No ID given will not work. Okay, I need to give it an ID. So let's find an ID. Just give it ID 18. So I need to actually find one. Since I'm hard coding it, I need to actually go in and find an actual ID. So I'll just hard code it for now. We'll worry about setting up forms later, but this can just be a quick, easy way just to see, do you have this working? So I'm going to do ID 8, or sorry, it was 18, right? Update link, or I'm going to change the title to updated. Update link. Like for ID 18, like it's null. I could try saying like get links again. So right now I'm seeing null getting pushed. Let's do get links. So it actually updated to my database. Because there it is, I just didn't update my UI correctly. Because I said update link right here. Like, what the hell is that? That's the function. It's actually, I want to do res.data. Oh no, I put it in this variable. I just think I forgot the I think I spelled that wrong. Updated link. So I spelled this wrong, so that was undefined. So that, like, it successfully updated my database, but then I screwed up updating my UI, so it came back as null, even though my database was successfully updated. My UI wasn't. So now there does become another step. There's another place to screw up, because we have to not only update the database, but we also have to update the UI. So let's get the links. I might need to, like, now, because I already updated, 18, maybe I go update 19 or something. Like I go change another one. So I'm just kind of hard coding this, testing it. Update link. Cool. Title, that was updated both in my database and in my UI. I could if I really want to make sure it's updated in my database, I refresh, because now my React state is completely like crushed, it's clobbered. And when I get the links, I'm actually grabbing it from my database. Cool. Let's do one last one, and then that will be it for the lecture. Let's just do the delete, because then you'll have at least all the CRUD actions done on our provider. Once again, no, actually, I'll just write this one out. So delete link. This one, I don't need a full-on object. I just need the ID. That's really what I need with this function. I need the ID of the link to delete. Actually, maybe I will copy this so I don't have to type all this out. Try catch. So if I look at my menu, it's a delete request, API links, and then the ID of the link. That's what I need to delete a link. So I do a delete. And then I do the base URL and then ID. That's passed to me to the function. So here I want to filter. Remember filtering, I'm just going to set links. I'm going to just grab my links. I'm going to do a filter method. And I'm going to go through all my links. And I want to keep all of the links where the ID, where the link.id does not match that res.data.id. I could also use ID here. They're going to be the same. The ID that was passed.
So that's saying keep all of the IDs the same except the specific one you want to toggle?
Nope, it's not going to, the IDs are not going, you're never going to change an ID on the front end. You're actually never going to change an ID on the back end. IDs are, you never update an ID. This is just saying, go through, so we just deleted one from the database. So go through my UI, the state, go through all my links and remove the link from my UI that was deleted from my database. It's always going to be these two steps with these actions. It's update, create, or delete from your database, and then you need to set your UI to match that change. So delete from DB. I could also say, delete from state. So like I did with all these other functions, I can just go ahead, delete link, pass that to my data provider, go to my links, import that now. Let's just call this delete link. I don't need to pass this an object. I just need to pass it a number, a valid ID. Like it has to be an ID that's in my database. So I'll just hard code it to 19. I'm getting a error right here. It doesn't like that await keyword. So it's like, why is that yelling at me? Well, if I use the await keyword, I need to say this function's async. I can't use the await keyword in a function unless I use the async. So let's get my links. I have 19 in here somewhere. 19 is right there. I can go ahead and delete that. Oh, no ID given will not work. I think, links, I'm probably calling the update function yet. I need to call delete link. Delete link, 19's gone. I do another delete. I get an error because now I don't have, I've already deleted 19 from my database.
And that means any ID 19 is gone forever now, right?
Yes, it is gone.
Question, are most backend languages very similar and do the same thing?
Well, as a front-end developer, like this is, I'd say for this purpose, I don't like, yes, they're all going to like this, the menu would be the same. I don't care if it's a Rails backend, Python. They're probably all like, and it's probably going to match exactly like a get to API links, returns all links. In Python, in Ruby, in C#, you know, yes, in that regard, it's going to be the same. How they do it, no, it's not going to be the same, but similar. So this is very like important to really this is like learning how to read like an API is very key. Go to like Twitter.
Get that from again, that thing you're saying is important.
What?
Where did you get that thing that you're saying is important from? Like, where'd you find it? I can't remember.
This?
Yeah.
It's in the README from the repo. but
Oh, okay,
I
gotcha.
could also just, it's more just learning. It's a really simple, it's these 4 verbs and it's the path. I mean, just let me show you like the Twitter API. Like, just want to see if I can like API reference. Get labs, tweet, stream, compliance, like delete to users ID, tweet, like this is their API. Like you do an HTTP API twitter.com to users ID, like tweet ID, like it's going to give you back, it's going to delete that tweet. Now this one you would need to like sign up, get a key, like you can't just go type this in obviously and delete a tweet. But you see how like this URL, like this language, it's give me the HTTP verb and the path. And Twitter will delete that tweet for you if you're authenticated. So yeah, is Twitter written in Rails or whatever? Or I think it actually is written in Rails. Like I don't know.
I heard that whenever you delete something, like it's still kind of in a way stored in the database. Is that true?
No, I mean, nope.
So when you get it, when you delete, like for say a tweet, it's deleted forever. There's no track of it.
I mean, I don't know what Twitter's doing. They could maybe have it like a backup thing that when you do delete something, it deletes it, but maybe they store it. For when with us, it's like, yes, it's definitely gone. But Twitter, like, I don't know, who knows what they do. It technically should be gone, but if you tweet someone, like obviously if you're like important and you tweet something, you can't really delete it because like someone can take a screenshot. But it should be gone from the database. I wouldn't trust I would say, you get what I'm saying? In theory,
Yeah, I understand.
yeah. Like when I delete this link, it's gone. There's like no way I can get that back. It's gone. So cool. Let's take lunch. Let's come back 2:15. I'm going to push this up to GitHub. Yeah, tomorrow we'll just go through this again. We'll finish up this lecture. I know this is a lot. This is, introducing the back end, but we're getting to the spot where it's like, hey, this is like full stack development. Cool. You can hop off. Come back 2:15.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.